Okay, we're here for video lab number 6 today. We're going to meet today's team. Who you be?
Josh. Trevor. Phil. Tariq.
Okay, and who from the audience can tell us what the lab is all about today? Yes.
Density.
And we're going to figure out the density of what?
The wood block.
The wood block. You have the wood block? Hold up
right
the
here.
wood block. Okay, now, first question to you. What do we mean by density? When we're talking about density.
Weight. Weight.
Well, it's more than weight.
Height, length.
No, more than that.
How much mass the object has
Compared to what?
compared to a cubic centimeter?
Which is called what?
A gram?
What do we, another word for space? It's another word for space.
Volume.
Volume. So we are comparing an object's weight or mass to the space it takes up or volume. And that comparison is called density. Okay, now, so that piece of wood that Phil has, we have to know two things about the wood. We have to know how much does it weigh and how much space does it take up. If we know that, we can figure out the density. Hold the block up so the entire class can see it. If this was a math class, there's a geometric shape that piece of wood is. What do we call that shape?
Rectangular prism.
Yes. And in math, you learn that there's a mathematical way to figure out the volume of a rectangular prism. How would we do that?
Length times width times height.
Right. So what we're going to have to do is measure the length, the width, and the height. And what metric unit will we measure it in? Centimeters. So with your finger, Phil, okay, take your finger and place it into your right nostril as far, no. Show us with your finger, what's the height of the block? Yes, the thickness. And what about its length? And how about its width? Okay, so that's what we're going to be measuring. So if you take the ruler now and measure the thickness of the block and tell us what is the height of the block.
2.0.
And you are going to be our secretary today, so if you would write down next to the height 2.0. Okay, and now if you would measure the length first, Phil.
I got 15.8.
And if you would write that down next to the length, 15.8. And are you ready with the width?
Already.
Okay, let's see the width.
5.7.
And if you would write that down. Okay. Now, mathematically, you told me, now that we measured these three things, that I have to do what to these three numbers?
Multiply.
Multiply them, and that's where you come in, Trevor. So if you would multiply those three numbers out and tell us, what did you get?
180.120.
180.120, is that what you said? 180.120 for the volume. Now, he just multiplied a centimeter times a centimeter times a centimeter. So my question to you is, what unit did he end up with? Cubic centimeters. So that's the unit that goes along with your number. So we're halfway there. We got the volume. Now we're going to weigh it. And Josh in front of him has the scale, which will measure what metric unit? Grams. So Josh, if you could weigh that up, and while that's happening, we'll check the kids out in the class today, see how they look today.
Jersey.
Try to look your best. Is that your best? Okay.
135.7.
What was that number?
135.7.
Okay. And if you would put that in, 135.7. All right. Now, let's go back to the volume for a second. The number that he came up with was one. You're going to have to visualize this number in your head now, because I'm going to ask a math question to all of you. The number was 180.120. 180.120. If I wanted to round off that number to the nearest whole number, 180.120, what would the number be?
180.
180. So if you could put down 180 under cubic centimeters rounded. And the grams that you just came up with was 135.7. What does that round off to? 135.7.
137.
136. Okay, so we now have the weight. We now have the volume. What do we have to do now to get the density?
You have to divide the weight by the volume.
Okay, we have to divide the weight by the volume. And that's where you come in again, Trevor. Plug those two numbers in and tell us, what does the density come out to be?
0.75.
And if you would put that down, and then if you would just turn the paper around so we can see what you came up with. So if we have a block of wood that has those dimensions, and we multiply them out, we get that volume, and then if we weigh it, we get that weight, and then if we divide it, we get 0.75 grams per cubic centimeters. That's the density unit here. So if we have a piece of wood the size of a cubic centimeter, it would weigh that number of grams. How big, what common object that you might find in a house is the size of a cubic centimeter?
A sugar cube?
A sugar cube, okay? So if we had a piece of wood the size of a sugar cube and we placed it onto that scale, it would weigh 0.75 grams. Anybody have a sugar cube with them?
I do.
Okay. Let's see that. Okay, so if we have a piece of wood that big, you okay, all right? A piece of wood that big, and we placed it onto a scale, if the wood was, that big, it would weigh 0.75 grams. So let me ask you a question, Justine. What are you doing with a sugar cube? Looking for a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, let me tell you this story that happened to me just yesterday. I was in the mall. Some of you didn't see me. It was really crowded there. I was sitting in the food court. You can see a lot of weird things going on in the food court if you just hang out long enough. You know what I'm talking about? For example, Nick. I've seen you at the mall before. You don't know that I've been watching you there. But Nick has figured out how to get an entire meal in the food court for free. Because he keeps walking past the Chinese takeout place and getting the bourbon and the sesame chicken, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And then he was once thrown out of the food court. The lady came jumping out from behind the counter over there after she saw you for a while. She said, "You'll be here 4 hours. You go now. You go now." And they threw him out of the food court. So, Nick, tell him the truth. He's embarrassed about it, but they just took him out like, Anyway, so I'm sitting there after they threw Nick out. This guy comes up to me, because it had to do with the sugar cube, this story. Guy comes up to me. I don't even know who the guy was. And he said, "You want to borrow $5,000 from me?" So I'm saying, oh, here we go. Let's see where this is going, right? So I said to the guy, I said, "What do you need $5,000 for?" He said, "I want to drink a cup of coffee." So I'm looking at him the way you're looking at him. I said, "Coffee only costs $1." He said, "Yeah, I know. I want to drink it in Brazil." In Brazil. That's where they make the coffee. Brazil, there's nothing like a good joke, and that was nothing like a good joke. All right, anyway, so everybody understands then what we mean now by the density, okay? Now, you guys all did your density lab, but you didn't get the same density answers. How come?
Because there's different types of wood.
Yes. Okay, do you remember some of the different kinds of wood that we used?
Black willow.
Yes, that was one kind. Cherry. Maple. Poplar. Do you remember which of the woods was the densest?
Maple.
The maple wood was the densest. Okay? So that if somebody was running after you with a bat, you wouldn't want to get hit over the head with the maple wood, right? Because it would hurt more than the others.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, so this ends video lab number
6.